Okay, hello, and welcome to this
Hello.
welcome to this eCampus News webinar, Cyber Certainty: How to Stage the Best Network Defense for Your Campus. My name is Kevin Hogan. I am the editor-at-large for eSchool, and I'm excited to have you join us for what should be a very informative session. Today's event is brought to you by PDQ. PDQ helps system administrators streamline their software deployment and patch management processes, whether you manage 15 machines or 1,500. Scan your machines, deploy custom scripts, and make impactful configuration changes in minutes. Use PDQ to automatically keep your machines up to date so you can focus your time and energy on where it's needed most. Before we get into our conversation, I'd like to take a minute to go over some of the features of the platform that we're using for this webinar. Today's event will be recorded, so you don't have to worry about missing a thing. Within a few days, you'll receive an email message that contains a link to the recorded webinar, along with a PDF of the slides. You can submit questions at any time during the presentation by clicking on the Q&A box. There will be a time at the end of the presentation for Rivka and I to address these questions, but honestly, during the course of the conversation, if something inspires you, please type it in and we'll add it in. I mean, one of the benefits of the Zoom platform is we can really make this a discussion with the audience. So I encourage that. There's also a chat function that you can launch by clicking on it. Feel free to use this if you need to contact someone from eSchool News, if you have a technical question. But again, if you have a question for the speaker, please use the Q&A box. There's also a closed caption available tab that's available by clicking on the CC tab. With these housekeeping items out of the way, let's get started. First, we actually want to reach out to the audience, and we have a few poll questions. Chris, if you could launch those. So number one, we want to find out, has your campus experienced a cybersecurity incident in the last 5 years? I know I have a guess, Rivka, on the answer to that. I think it will be a pretty high majority, right? So we'll give you guys a few seconds to click that in. And I know as we get into the conversation, even 5 years ago, this was a significant issue, but it's only escalated since then. And I think we have a poll question number 2. On a scale of 1 to 10, how prepared do you feel in terms of being prepared? So 1 being unprepared or 10 being fully prepared. This probably depends on the day of the week. So actually got some results back from poll question number 1. We're right at 50-50 there. So I actually thought there might be a higher percentage that had felt the attack, but still that's 50-50 is too many as it is. So we'll see what the scale is. And then I think there's one more. Yep. So which of the following common sense practices is the most time consuming for you? Patch management, user authentication, or training and awareness? I will not pretend to know what patch management is, but I think that's definitely sounds something on the coding side. But I think when we get into this conversation, the idea of training and awareness and user behavior is going to be a question that I certainly have for Rivka on how important it is in terms of professional development for faculty, as well as user understanding for students. What is the greater danger? Is it not having your patches managed or your users managed, or at least educated? So the results of poll number 2, everyone feels prepared to a certain degree, and everyone feels from 7, 8, 9, and 10. So everyone has a certain level of comfort there, which is good to hear. And then we'll wait to see what we get from question number 3. But without further ado, I want to introduce our guest today for this webinar, Rivka Tajer. Rivka is a cybersecurity consultant who works with a number of organizations in both K-12 and higher ed, one including the K-12 Security Information Exchange, which is a new national nonprofit dedicated solely to helping protect public and private schools from cybersecurity threats. This member community is a cost-effective forum for crowdsourcing security information among a vetted, trusted group of professionals with a common interest, which is to protect the schools. And Rivka, thank you so much for taking the time to share your insights with us today. I'm really excited about this conversation.
Me too, and thank you for having me.
I guess really, yeah, I mean, it's, you know, as much as I'm tired of talking about COVID and as much as I'm tired of talking about and reading about, you know, the constant threats to not only institutions of higher education, but all over the place between corporations, everything else. I mean, it's this ongoing, this kind of ongoing battle. But nevertheless, it's probably the most important conversation that network administrators could be having today, right? I mean, it's the threats really was number one before COVID, but really kind of takes a top slot during the current health crisis that we have. Maybe we start off, talk a little bit about your perspective of the state of play right now in terms of cybersecurity and higher ed.
Well, you know, you asked some poll questions there, whether you've been cyber attacked in the last 5 years. So the type of attacks are very different since COVID. And it's not just the type of attacks, but there's a lot of times, and I have served on White House committees where there are threats to critical infrastructure, and universities are one of those critical infrastructure bodies that were overlooked. You know, people think utilities, transportation, those kinds of things, but you might not know you're being attacked. And so that is much more likely than 50%. So all kinds of tech has always been an arms race, right? So what did COVID do? COVID made much more sophisticated hackers. It put a burden on network systems so that the opportunity to get in much more rudimentary ways became easier because systems were overburdened. And then, like an arms race, things evolved as new ways of being and new habits formed. So there are a lot of things going on to manage right now for a university network administrator, and they're going to be understaffed, under-budgeted, and in need of sociological expertise and outreach.
Now, was it the that massive shift to remote? I mean, that in March, when all the university students went home, my own university student came home with her laptop and she started taking her classes up in the bedroom where they were, I guess, I mean, she was logging into the VPN, but she was remote and she was also using her phone, and her teachers were using the phone and probably using applications and various other practices that were maybe outside of the network. Is that why that acceleration, or did that weaken the security of university networks? Was that part of the reason anyway?
Yeah, they were overburdened. But remember that right before COVID hit, there was a big move and trend of online education anyway. So these things had been coming, but it's the confluence, because as network administrators, we're building architectures. You have a confluence of databases. And remember that when a database is static, it's safe. When it starts interacting with the public, it's not safe. It's on the journey back and forth that things get lost, right?
Yep.
So right before COVID, you know, kids were destroying all kinds of school security, going around with Chromebooks and sitting in labs, you know, bringing their thumb drives and, you know, just continuous partial interest in everything and going on their social media while they're in school labs. And there was all kinds of problems there before. But yes, of course, we all went on Zoom. Okay. And no fault of anyone, right? So that the needs of security, when something is 100%, what was quietly being built and expanded on before, and there were integrations, all of a sudden it hit a critical mass that no one could have been ready for, right? So it left a lot of vulnerabilities, and you start seeing the back doors, college bookstores, you know, the health center. Okay, all of The FAFSA for leaning back into seniors in high school. The FAFSA. Oh, the Common App. They were already having problems with the Common App, and this just made it worse, right? And then Zoom.
Yeah.
Zoom had its own problems.
Right. Yeah, the
Right.
Zoom bomb was born, if nothing else, right? In terms of
The Zoom bomb was born.
yeah.
And honestly, college students aren't safe with what they do. They take their student emails, okay, because they can get benefits with their student emails. I watch my daughter, she's a junior in college, do it all the time. She uses her prac.edu because it gets her stuff, right?
Yeah.
More
Yeah.
than her Gmail gets her stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So it's out there and they're signing up with their Facebook and their Instagram and all of their things using their university email and creating all kinds of backdoors.
Yeah. So really, I mean, in the course of this conversation, we have the technology aspect of things and you know, the advancement of defenses as well as the advancement of the hackers themselves figuring out new ways to crunch the code, so to speak, to get in. But really, a lot of this has to do with human behavior and user behavior and educating folks, right? Have you seen a change in the sense of responsibility for folks who are on the call today, to where there's more of a responsibility on the behavior side than maybe they had in previous years?
Do you mean in terms of the students and the faculty or the IT team?
The IT team, but the responsibility of the IT team to educate the users.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just educate, they have to port them. One of the interesting things that happened with Zoom and why Zoom pulled ahead versus other video conferencing tools is early on, one of the deals they made is they integrated into Canvas, okay? Canvas quickly becoming a standard university app for students and professors. There's a different portal, all the grading systems are there, but many universities had private systems before that, right? But once Zoom was integrated into Canvas, it simply worked better, especially when the networks are really strained and all of that. So this migration off of other LMS systems and proprietary systems onto Canvas, it's not just behaviorally, it's literally, first of all, IT has this physical responsibility of being individual tech support to every professor who has libraries of information, okay, archives and archives that they have to hoist off of one system and onto Canvas with no ability to do so, right? They don't even understand that when they post a test on Canvas, that they can see and the student can't, that they haven't hit the numbers right, right? Yeah. Or there's an uploading and all of these things. So there's the first responsibility of, regardless of what your job description is being the tech support in the method of migration, because you're going to have to deputize your faculty. Okay. You know, you watch cop and robber shows and all of a sudden there's like some horrible event and the sheriff's going around getting regular citizens to be deputies. They will never be police officers. Okay. Yeah. They don't have any skills. You're just kind of hoping for the best. And this is the analogy. It's kind of a Wild West, right? All of these professors have been deputized and, you know, professors in certain liberal arts. Okay. The engineering professors will be great. The animation professors will be pretty good, but, you know, give me your English teacher and I'll find you someone who will take the longest to, you know, to get there. And for good reason, but so they've had to deputize. So now they have all these unskilled workers. All right. They have these unskilled workers helping them with this process, right? Okay. Please remember to lock out your students of Zoom. You have to admit them. And then, you know, internet connectivity goes bad. So the student drops off and they're trying to get back in. So the professor's sitting there and they get tired of it. So they unlock the system, right? And then you create vulnerabilities, and it's not their fault. It's just so different than the paradigm, right? And online learning right before COVID had been very defined, right? Most of it was asynchronous, right? You go on, you download your assignments, maybe once a week you come and you have powwows and you have work groups, but online education was not in real time. It was not designed to be a full curriculum in real time. So you're deputizing people, and then you have the entire education process of how are you actually secure? And, you know, college students generally don't learn something until it happens to them, you know, for real. Okay. And then, oh my God, what do I do? Right. They learn fastest when they download illegal music or they join all kinds of clubs that put viruses on their computer and then they can't use it and then they get upset. And then, so you have to sort of create and gamify how they're going to be able to manage this. And then there is the technical side. There's a whole different architecture that needs to be added and new programs that we're going to be migrated over time. There's suddenly, we need all of this yesterday.
Right. And that actually,
so I think there's buckets. Yeah.
But the answer to poll question number 3, most folks on the call here today find that training and awareness is the most time-consuming part of their job, right? Talk about how to address that. You talked about the deputizing, but in the course of deputizing, I mean, there's also just kind of messaging. I know there are a few instances that I've read about and talked with folks about where you're putting out false phishing experiments, right? Give us some details on some of the ways in which you can kind of raise that awareness.
Well, I think raising awareness, and this might sound a little out tongue, but with an EDU email, I would limit what they're able to do with it. Yeah. And that's a whole different way of thinking, right? Because, you know, you can go buy Broadway tickets with your EDU, right? And your student ID card. And if you're in New York and go down Broadway, you're going to get extra discounts. And universities, and rightfully so, have been champions of this. You know, please use your studentness. But you know what? If a network administrator needs to say, you try and email someone out of this university with that email address, it simply won't send. I understand certain situations where you might need to do that. Right. So I would limit what they're doing at first until the education is there, right? Because there's so much that can go wrong. And there's so much more online buying. Okay. The bookstores are selling everything now. Okay. Bookstores are the heart and soul of universities or campus stores or whatever they've evolved into. And that's a backdoor. It's a backdoor where it's not like the tuition portals that are protected, that have different layers of architecture that they've carefully and had time to daintily do. Okay. Everyone's on PayPal and everything. So now you have the entire e-commerce shopping cart world in your campus. All right. Because I'm buying everything from, you know, foam toppers for my dorm to the, you know, the excerpts of texts I need to whatever. Right. And the campus has an opportunity to make money from it. So there's the back door too. And then the entire health insurance system, depending on whether you're in state or out state, there's so many open doors. So I would start by, until people are educated that they're very limited in what they can do, until they can demonstrate that they understand the responsibility. There's a lot of responsibility to have that EDU email. And I start with the email because it's the most common thing. The professors have them and the students have them. And certain things they've already done. You cannot go into, if you're a student, usually in most universities now, you can't log into your student Zoom online class with your Gmail. It won't recognize you, it won't. So that's the good thing. So they've done the opt-in part, right? Where in order to participate in the university, you have to use your EDU. Just like right now in most campuses, COVID, you know, in dorms, you can spend the night, but only if you're already a student can you go to another dorm, right? You can't just come off the streets and infest the campus. And that mentality should go to cyber, right? So if you try to sign up for things like your Smithsonian, your Broadway shows, or, you know,
and so is that part of a new protocol then? I mean, is that something that should be just part of the student handbook where like, these are the expectations, like a user agreement? This is a
recommended best practice from me. Because you need to contain your universe, right? Right. You know, and that is something you can do on a network architecture without consulting anyone and just start doing it, right? So the thing that I feel for IT is that there's so many things and there's more every day, okay? That just stop the bleeding, right? Right. And then form the education, okay? Because nobody likes it, right? No, the students don't like it either. They don't want their stuff stolen. They don't want to, you know, they go on GoFundMe's now with their emails from their university, the most hacked malwared, and they're trying to do something good, right? What are they
Yep.
doing? It's whatever awareness day, and they're trying to contribute. All
Yep.
right. Okay. You'll be able to use your university ID when you look at the fund you want, and then you'll go to the website. There'll be a way to check whether it's a legitimate website, and you don't donate through GoFundMe, you donate through the university website, which, one of the clubs will host that. Right.
Right.
Because you should be doing that anyway.
Right.
Right. Because
Well, that's it. So that's the back end.
money.
Yeah.
Right.
Because
So
that's
it
the back
steals
end
their
of it
money,
as well.
which is the parents' money often. Right. So then they have a back door into your kingdom as well. So I think training like that is, why are we doing this? Why is your university, email so limited? And I think that's really, really important to, it's important to emphasize for them, because you can't teach without consequence, and you can't teach everything at once, because in fairness to the faculty and in fairness to the students, they're learning everything all over. And just remember, like, especially freshmen, just, right before COVID, a year ago or last year, all the high schools give them Chromebooks. They're running in and out. They download their free music and illegal TV on it. They bring the Chromebook back. They're on Google Drives. All right. Their entire high school is this infestation. Okay. It's literally a public bathroom. And then they come to university, right, where systems have been set up, but they drag all the crap there. And I noticed something else that universities do, which they do to make sure that the student gets communicated to, is that they always allow professors to send to both emails, right? They'll send to the one that they first applied to school with. It might be their Gmail plus their EDU.
Yeah.
And they should make that verboten.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't take any, it's sort of the, people are going to complain to IT all the time, and they should just have their boundaries and say, well, I'm trying to protect you.
Right.
All right. We'll do a test to make sure you're getting your alerts. You set up all your alerts on your phones, on your tablets, on your computers, students, but you need to be using only this email.
But and it goes beyond just the students and faculty as users as well, right? I mean, you have the back end. You talk about the e-commerce. Had recent conversations about looking at, for the first time, a lot of universities, their invoicing systems were still paper-based from vendors all over the place. COVID hits, now everything needs to be automated. And there's a lot of security holes on that back end as well, right? I mean, you talk about the GoFundMe sites, and that the ability for, say, a certain club on university campus who wants to do a fundraiser, they should be doing it, as you're saying, like through the university and not setting themselves up outside. Talk a little bit about that back end, maybe the back office aspects of some of the security that maybe our audience may not be thinking about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what happens is it's third-party risk management, and a lot of universities do not have the habit. It's not that their IT teams don't, but they don't have the habit of thinking of themselves as functioning like a corporation with third-party vendors, right? That you have your third-party risk management and internal, external, but they have to think that way, and they have to budget and allow IT to set up that way, right? So the clubs usually do use the internal systems, but they often go out to the internet, and that's where they have to rein it in. The other thing that's happening on campuses is it's much more common to have free campus flu shots and, random COVID testing, even though you're vaccinated if you live in the dorms, and all these kinds of things. All right. So now it's not just sort of, the kid has the flu, the student has the flu, and they walk over to the health center, or they don't. Every student is using that health center all the time because they have to. Right? They have to check in. They have their student ID cards and the apps of their student ID cards that constantly show whether they're vaccinated and how up to date. So it's weakness on that system. So that back end between the health center, whatever health services is run at every university, and that back end system has to be tightened, and you got to batten down those hatches. You have to harden that system connection. And you've got to, make that point to get budget to do it if you need it, because that is such a weak link. And I get your medical ID. I've got your parents' financial information. I have the keys to your kingdom in about 9 minutes, an average black hat. right? It's a huge backdoor.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest one right now because of all the health concerns, but all of the vendors that come in and out, right? They just need to shore it up because of malware and because of account takeover. So I can go to take over one of the students' emails, hack into one of their vendors. So it looks like the vendor's going and doing illegal things or setting malware and ransomware in university systems. And there's so much at universities that have where you can use your meal plan card at the merchants around town. Okay, that's a whole different system that people used to rely on the payments processing for, right? That back-end system, and they need to have their own layer of security over it, which people aren't used to. Because one of the biggest trends right now, and what network administrator in a university needs to know this headache, but skimmers are the biggest trend in POS. So you go into that pizza joint, you swipe your card still, all right? And you buy that pizza. Skimmers are something you can buy in the dark web for 20 bucks, okay? It steals the credit card information, the CVV on the back, the expiration date, and all of the student's information. All right. So in your meal plan card that gives your student ID, it'll give you the student email. It'll give you where they live. All right. And with all of that, I can go onto the portal and look at my parents' finances who've paid the bill. Right. So this whole thing, the student ID card thing that everyone's used to, you scan in, you swipe buildings, they need to move to apps fast. And now they have both, right?
Yep.
They have both. The apps do some things, it's good COVID, flash test or whatever they use it for, campus maps. They have to retool that for security. And that's a completely different architecture.
Yeah.
And expense.
Now, amongst the various, and you just ticked off a number of the various activities that universities need to defend themselves from, is there a way to rank those? I mean, is there something that is like the number one threat right now that from your perspective? Malware, because you can hold someone for ransom, and I promise you, if you pay the ransom, you're not guaranteed that anything good will happen, right? Yeah. But malware, because you can take the reins of a system. That's what malware was designed to do, not just to bring a system down, but to take the reins. And the number one backdoor to ransomware and malware is account takeover. And account takeover happens when someone takes your email and goes and has fun with it. All right. Because then people say, oh, well, the IP address, and then you can change, but you can track IP addresses across emails. The number one reason they should not be letting my daughter use both her Gmail and the Pratt EDU. Okay. Because it's a confluence of data. You need highly individualized hierarchical access control. And by the way, this is the same at the White House. It is the same in critical infrastructure. And I think our universities are part of critical infrastructure. You need access control, and it is the biggest problem. And you need to have it at every step of the way. And all of the two-factor authentication, different things that you have to show them both. The students will get used to it. It helps them. They don't want things stolen from them either. And is the reason you think that they find that education specifically, but higher education especially, has been attacked more, is because it's really been the most vulnerable? I mean, is it kind of behind what you would see in corporate America in terms of the use of your work email versus what you're finding in universities? Or is there something else?
No, I think that what happens is that for everything you steal inside a university, you affect more people. Okay. So if I steal something for you at work, or you're using your work email, who didn't use their work email to go, in the height of COVID, when everything was happening, to research what is the WHO saying today? It was the Red Cross. And of course the hackers built, fake sites. Okay. So they're capturing your data. So they could get to you. They might be able to cross-reference if you take a lot of quizzes online, like what kind of animal would you be? Or like, what color are you? Okay, never do that, because then I know which Kevin Hogan it is versus the out of 1,000, I start to narrow down. That's what those quizzes are. Those are black hat hackers whittling down people. And if I know which Kevin Hogan you are, then I know who your wife is and your kids are, et cetera, et cetera. But in corporate America, a lot of times it's just you grab a bunch of the emails from a corporate domain and criminals go use them on the dark web, or they infiltrate the system or try to steal intellectual property. You're a means to an end and you're not the end. The problem with universities is that I'm going after the student data, okay? And private universities really beware because the parents are paying a lot, okay? Because I want your medical data, I want your parents' finances, okay? And then I'm gonna get you and I'm gonna track you forever because you're an adult. So everything you do now, whether it's with the IRS, whether it's with health insurance, you have to do it by yourself now. So I'm setting up this baseline and now I have you forever.
Yeah.
Okay. So everything you interact with, so they can just get a lot more. They can harm the university, but they can harm entire families with it. And that they can go back and harm the high school you came from so that they can get into your, it's just a much nicer spread. You know, it's like a, you know, viruses are smart.
Yeah.
Right? So these things are smart. They look to reproduce.
Well, now that you've got me completely frightened.
I know this is why people never ask me back. Because they're like, you know what, Rivka, you scare people. Okay.
Well, let's talk a little bit about how to defend it. And, you know, you've already given some various tips and tricks, but give us some more strategies in terms of how a network administrator, maybe they need to increase their budget to add some new technologies, or maybe add some new training or consultants to come in and change the user culture. Go into some of the ways that you've seen universities successfully improve their situation. So we have a lot of the audience members who consider themselves 7 out of 10. How do they go to 7 to 9, or how does everybody get to 10?
Some of it's simple. So the good news is, aside from being scared, there are many things that you can do that are mostly behavioral on the user end, okay, that are not really expensive, that, you know, even if you cut down your vulnerability by 30%, that's 30% better. And one of the things I mentioned before, do not send emails to both their Gmail and their EDU. Isolate that email and limit what it's able to do, and keep it in your universe, you know, university. You have a universe, contain it, put the gates around it, right? Have it function there, but don't let it just run rampant. The second thing is that I found very successful is scary emails actually sent to the students, because my daughter has called me with them and I thought it was super smart. There has been, you know, a breach. Please go right now and change your password. You could go one step further, and if they don't change their password that day, it stops working. And the minute they don't have access to anything and they're late for class and blah, blah, they'll change their password.
Yeah.
I would force conditioning. And I hope I'm not revealing that I'm this horrible parent that's just out talking about everything. But honestly, you have too many problems. Just force it. This password will no longer work at 2 p.m. today. So if you have a class, go change your password right now.
Yeah.
And log out to do it and go change it. But these do work. The other thing is texts. Tell them not to open any text if they don't know who it's from. Okay, or any email, because the minute you click on an email, that's it, game over. Even if you delete it afterwards, you can't even click on it, because that's the door. They already have everything they need, right? And explain. The university will never, except coming from the one, you know, all universities have alert systems, like for snow days or whatever's going on. You know, the dorm has a plumbing, the elevator's out, that here is the number that you will be getting alerts from all year. We will never text you from another number, ever, right? Because actually the students are really smart at that, because they're worried, you know, oh my God, did I miss something? Do I have to do something? So they do it because they don't want to miss out and get penalized. So that's a really easy training to do, is just to say, if it's not from this number, never click on it. But it's those what not to do and what to do instead. And I think when students know, when adults know, when anyone knows, not just what not to do, but if you have to do something, what do you do instead? Right. Would be really, really good. I would encourage, if there's a shift going on from physical campus ID cards to having them online, right? Where you can always have two-factor authentication, because people lose those cards all the time.
Yeah.
Make that switch as fast as possible. Because it's expensive for the university anyway. You could use that budget to switch to app QR codes. I mean, a lot of them don't swipe anymore anyway, right? You
Yeah. So you're saying lose the physical card and just have everything be app based.
Physical card is a huge liability. You know, one of the universities that I worked with, I think it cost them $20,000 a year to $40,000 to replace cards that students had lost, never mind the security implications. All right. Because how many dorms are there in one university? I can take a card that I find on the bottom of a sticky pizza joint and just go to everyone until it works. Okay. Yeah. Whereas a QR code, because a lot of them are scanners now, because the old slide has worked, just make that transition. Ask for the budget to make that transition if you're still using the physical card in any other way except tap. Right. I would lose them, because you can protect the app much better.
You lose the threat of the skimmer too that way, I guess, right?
Completely. And students, the phone's their arm. They're not going to lose their phone the way they lose their ID card. Okay. And you know, they have lanyards, they either wear them or they put them in their purse, but they're going to lose them. Yeah. They're just going to. Okay. Yeah. They're not going to lose their phone. Yeah. And so that is a big thing too. So you're just hardening your system, but in those things, you're teaching them things. Mm-hmm. The other thing I think that the hoisting professors' archives from old proprietary systems that did not have it built into the Canvas, which is integrated with the Zoom, which is, you're going to need support staff to help them do it, because it's semester 3 now at 3 universities I know. And they're saying, you know, by spring 2022, you're not going to be able to use the old system anymore, but they keep extending it. There's some faculty meeting, they beg for more time. It happens. The longer these things take without pulling the Band-Aid, the longer these vulnerabilities are. And it's a big headache. And many professors don't know how to do it.
Now you have a lot of these apps that you were talking about. And also when you talk about Canvas or other platforms, and they say that they have their own native built-in security capabilities. Are those enough? I mean, does there need to be a second layer that tie these things together? Talk a little bit more about the kind of the architecture and the infrastructure of these things in terms of building in redundancies. How does that happen?
Well, because you can limit. So they have devices all over campus, right? And a lot of the labs have screens and things like that. You can limit who's able to get onto those devices and what they're able to download, right? So you have an analogy of this in your own home entertainment system. Your kids' friends come over and all of a sudden everything's buggy in your house and nothing works and you have all kinds of, it's because they've downloaded like 50,000 game apps from, you know, somewhere, and they've infested your system. You know, there's actually you can go into your router and all of this, and you can actually program this on your TV today. These are the only IP addresses that can download, and these are the only things they can download. I would limit what is downloaded in all of these campus labs. That's hardening your system. Mm-hmm. Limit who's accessing them. That's why it's important to isolate those EDU emails, and then limit what they're accessing. And if they want to access something new, it should go through a protocol, a security check. Just pretend you're an airport. Oh, we found this great new thing and we're going to use this, you know, and the professor's recommending these things all the time. All right, before we bring in someone off the streets here, is this a safe thing to use in our classroom? And it should just, you know, they should get an IT ticket. You know, the IT ticket system is there in the university for, I want to start using this new resource. And then it goes through a checklist. Right. People don't ask IT if they can use a new resource. They put it up there because they're trying to give to their students, right? Right. And they just post things. They post all kinds of things, links. They're constantly bringing them out. So I would just vet those resources And you're going to need, and the other thing is university sponsored little VPNs for all their devices. Okay, so here's an architecture thing. So right now on my mobile phone, I have AT&T. Okay, I can go to the App Store and I download for $3.99 a month. All right, I download the AT&T VPN. So the minute I leave my house, all right, because the other problem is these are kids, so they walk out onto the street, and even though you've hardened your gaming system inside the university, they walk off campus and they're all of a sudden infested with stuff, and then they walk right back on, right? And then they bring stuff in that the VPN needs to remain on. And this is habits that every human being should have anyway right now.
Sure.
And you know what's great about a university? You can charge the students for it. There are technology fees in there that I have never been able to decipher what they're using it for. So add another $3.99 per student, or get your, your bulk discount and charge them for this, right? And say you will not be able to log on to your EDU app and therefore prove your COVID vaccination or do anything else or using your meal plan until you're using the VPN, right? You're creating habits. And by the way, these are great habits for them for life. And it's for faculty too, it's for everyone. So that is a wireless architectural thing. And then you can gather data,
Right.
what's trying to get into your system. So here's the other aspect that is escalating that they need to do is you need to do vulnerability tests, penetration tests, and cyber threat analysis periodically. So here's a budget item that's never been on anybody's budget. And everyone's like, well, we'd love to do that. Big corporations do that, but it's an expense. And right now I need this other 5 things and, we need all these other stuff, but this can actually save you a lot of money because you can show where you're vulnerable before a crime has actually happened, before someone is already infiltrated or taken over your accounts and things like that, and tighten up your account takeover, tighten up your access control, and do periodic tests. Because the other thing that periodic tests do is whenever you go to your budget meetings, you're like, look, these are the vulnerabilities. These are the new trends in malware. We were fine for 2021 trends, but we don't have these protections that are needed. And now you're talking about patches. This is what patch management is.
Thank you.
Okay. So
I
what
was
they're
waiting
doing,
for it.
they're patching the system, okay, to not allow certain protocols or to change the way certain protocols interact. All right. That's what patches are. There's patches on whatever network systems and operating systems they're using. This malware has been infected. Please patch your system. Okay, these are what we call lagging indicators. This stuff has already happened, and the patches are treating the symptom and not the disease. What you need to know is what the trends are and who is being targeted, and then build systems to stay ahead of it. And that's just not part of the budgeting arms race that has been considered, and the IT teams need to be listened. So they need to make it a very strong voice.
So historically, you're saying it's been kind of a reactive environment where IT teams are having to react to a new threat, and you're suggesting what they need to be is proactive and kind of be ahead of the game.
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely. Because it is true that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure here. It's absolutely true. But things like penetration tests and vulnerability tests have never been there. And the other issue is that, hire yourself a cybersecurity IT team member. But never mind CISOs, there's a workforce shortage of this, because now, if you want to go into cybersecurity right now, as a freshman in college, go for it. What a great wide open field. Okay. It's like the civil engineering of the end of the industrial era or the technological era, right? It is a hot field. So you're also, you need to budget for analyst services, where you outsource some of these things, even if it's just, please tell us where we're vulnerable. Let's do a check. And then some remediation on the architecture and on the network and the hardening of systems, so that you start creating documentation for how these budgets need to change. Because these budgets have not considered these things. They're considering old sorts of things, right?
Well, do you think it's getting at least easier now for IT teams and administrators to convince the powers that be that these are essential services, or do you think that that's still kind of a tough road to hoe?
I think it's always tough because in university budgets, it's political. right? You go to meetings and you sit there and there's somebody who's been waiting to do something, right, for a long time. And all of a sudden there's new money budgeted, and, there's always trade-offs, and it's hard, and it becomes very political, and you can go in knowing, but this is really, mission critical. And a lot is hoisted on IT. I know entire gigantic universities, all right, where their merchant base that feeds off that meal plan card is something like 100 merchants, okay? And they don't have a business development team that running. All of the onus falls on IT, right?
Stitch it all together.
And to make sure that there's maximum profit. It's a big money maker for the universities, all right? That's why they don't use Visa and MasterCard. That's why they have their private money, because they also hold the risk. So there's a lot going on there. So I think these things like vulnerability tests, proving when things have gone wrong is going to be very important in getting the budget.
You have the evidence. You have the evidence in front of you.
You need evidence.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need evidence.
And you'd rather have it from the white hats than the black hats.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because they love, and there are symptoms that that are also evident, right? That there's somebody who shouldn't have been in the Zoom, and the teacher thought they were a student, or you can't. That's why some of these things, which are not expensive, you've done your due diligence too, right? You've limited the use of the university emails. You've made the case for going cardless and using the app. You've done these things. You're sending alerts to the students. I would send a lot of alerts, by the way. You can automate them, make it somebody's internship in cybersecurity, some major in engineering. Get one of the clubs to do it.
Yeah.
To send alerts and help you, because I think that it does affect the student behavior. And then you make the case, like, we're doing all of this stuff to do what we can without the budget, but we're going to need to know. Yeah. It's like there are other tests that are well built into budgets, right? You have stress tests on networks, right? What is the capacity? This when your Wi-Fi is slow, right?
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
University stadiums deal with this all the time. When it's a full house, no one can tweet what the football star's doing anymore, because it's overloaded. And then they go in and they change infrastructure, and they tend to do it on the revenue side. Sports stadiums get a lot of first dibs because they bring in a lot of money. So it offsets. So I think you just have to make the case in other areas.
And when you're talking about vulnerability tests, are you talking about like phishing drills where you're sending those out to administrators or students? Talk a little bit about what that
or also cyber threat intel. What's already happened in your university? Well, when I go and look, when I go and look on all the dark web crawlers, like the scrapers, hundreds of them that are automated on all of the, the Onion and the Tor and all of that, or your account takeover, when it happened, and then looking at those and seeing if it's been used nefariously, seeing where people are sitting on in your system. I mean, these are things that you can do and that need to be done. And it can save a lot of money in the long run to do them. And the thing is that university IT departments don't necessarily have the analysts hired to go run these tests with various software and things that you need, or just tools they've built. They're all Linux tools. You have to have people who have really built these things, but you can outsource these services. And I would definitely vie to do that in a university, even as an experiment.
Yeah.
Let's do it once and see what happens, see what we see. And now, what's interesting is that it will be driven. The good news for IT is that you're going to have help along the way, because the insurance, the liability insurance that universities hold, are moving toward. This is a trend where all business liability, and you have huge liability insurance on universities because people live on the premises and all that, are going to start demanding best practices and due diligence, and your insurance premiums will be based on this. Cybersecurity used to be a rider on business insurance, and now it's part of it. So if IT needs help, and this is a strategy that I've helped people with, go find out who your liability insurance is on campus, and find out in 2022 what they're going to require from IT in terms of cybersecurity due diligence to protect the intellectual property and the personal and financial and healthcare data of employees and students. Because once you have that insurance there and say, this is going to be, well, we got to do this, it'll help you.
That's really insightful. I mean, and that's probably not something that was in the the checklist in the job description when they first got in as a system administrator, right? I mean, getting into the nitty gritty of insurance policies and all the rest of it, but that seems to be a strong tool.
But if the CFO or the VP of finance or anyone in your accounting department asks you where you heard that, it was not from me.
Very good. Now here's a question of scale. We didn't ask this question to our audience, but I assume there's a variety of sizes of universities that are listening in today. Are there different pieces of advice that you would give for a smaller institution versus a larger institution?
Well, with scale comes trouble. And that's why things like using your university email, I think you just, price per campus. I think with one of these things is with this kind of thing and the kind of vulnerabilities, it's that, remember that there's still physical world, and resilience is always about the physical world meets the cyber world. And I think that when you institute these things, what I would say to bigger universities, especially state university systems that have a bazillion locations, is when you are fighting for budget, it's always good to start with the most complicated, and then you can scale down from there in terms of getting the kind of funding you need. And if there is someone, in your system, like the SUNY system in the state of New York, there are groups, I'm sure you already belong to the IT group that's part of the entire SUNY system, regardless of location, but, be there in solidarity for even other campuses. I think the campus information sharing is important, and you're going to have a bigger need for that because there's a lot more ways to steal in multi-located campuses. Every time there's a location, there's an order of magnitude more complexity. Yeah. So you're going to have to do that and start somewhere, learn, and then spread. Because sometimes, those budgets come from different places, and then everybody's doing this now. I would experiment and pilot, because there are peculiarities. A dense urban environment is going to be completely different than a country environment, even online, just because of the way it's targeted.
Right.
And because your interaction with merchants outside the campus are going to make money more third-party risk vulnerability points.
Right.
IT teams know this, but I would pilot, because you're going to under budget if you don't.
That's another interesting point you raise about sharing best practices. One of the things, I've covered education technology for a long time. One of the great parts about it is that institutions are always willing to talk about their successes and things that the innovations that they've created, and they bring things together. And then you come to a topic like cybersecurity, and everyone kind of is like, yeah, no, really don't have much to share, because they're worried, right?
It's reputational, and it's not, it's tough. It's a tough one. You don't want to show your warts, and you also don't want to tell the bad guys anything. All right, so here's my other favorite piece of advice, is that, and this is behavioral, and it's kind of fun because students are good at this. Teach them how to give out misinformation. Misinformation is such a great defense, okay? So for example, I always lie about my birthday on every social media, okay? I make it a few weeks before, so if somebody's wishing me a happy birthday, it still counts, right?
You're 27, right?
Exactly. So that, but you know what? Not even to study infant mortality rates does anyone in the world need your month, your date, and your year. Okay. And with your zip code, I can get your medical records in about 5 minutes, find out what hospital you were born, and they get the keys to your kingdom. So change the date. Misinformation, right? Why universities could easily move to having students month and year. Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. You can say, well, it's the day they turn 18 where certain things apply. Okay. But in the way they go about things, to give out misinformation. And the other thing to teach is there is only one place to keep passwords, and that is on a piece of paper. Do not let them use keychains. Like, drill into their heads. Do not put passwords on your keychain. Do not log in and create accounts, if you do let them use their EDU, by signing in with Facebook or Google, ever.
Right.
Ever. It's just backdoors all over the place. They never log out of those things. And they should just not keep the passwords there.
Yeah.
But also, you can start changing their habits. Force them to change their passwords every month on their university thing. That you can do.
Right.
They just won't be able to log into Zoom if they don't.
So you're mean because you love all those techniques that maybe on the user side appear as frustrations, but it's just like in many other things, especially when you're talking about college students, like, we're doing this to protect you as much as anything else.
But 65% of corporate America doesn't change their passwords either.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So it's not actually, they'll be better at it.
Right. Once they get
They'll be better at it, and students will have many more creative passwords, and they will write them down and shove them somewhere. They will get it actually really, really fast. And it should be frequently. It should be once a month. You cannot log into Canvas or whatever you use. You just stop them cold, and they'll change their password. Yeah.
Now, I knew the most difficult part of this conversation this afternoon would be to end it, but we are coming up to the end of our time here. But let me finish up. Maybe we can finish up with a glass half full. I think the last 15 or 20 minutes, you gave a number of great solutions for folks. But, going forward, and you talk about this ultimate arms race, and you look at the horizon, and you think about our audience, what are the things that they should be looking at in order to do what you suggested, which is to be proactive? If you have a couple of last suggestions on that end.
I would look at going, if you do not have any sort of cyber threat intel ability on your IT team, there are workshops, there is continuing education, which will be really easy to sell in university environments, that you need CISO-esque training, you need training to look at the vulnerabilities in your system.
Okay.
Especially if you can't, because that is going to be really key, is to be able to conduct your vulnerability tests and your penetration tests, and to be able to spend the time to devise them to allow that professional development.
Yeah. Well, great.
And all vertical industries, the universities should, they'll have a hard time telling you no. Right.
Right. Well, Rivka, thank you so much for your time and your
Thanks
insights.
for having me.
I think we had a lot of great stuff. Thank you to the audience. If you submitted a question that we didn't get to in the Q&A portion, someone from PDQ will follow up with you directly on that. Once again, I'd like to thank Rivka today for some really great insights, I think, and suggestions. And again, thank you to the audience for joining in as well. As a reminder, you'll get an email within the next few days that contains a link to this recording along with the slides. Thanks again for participating, and have a great day. Bye, Rivka.
Bye. Thanks, Kevin.